Good morning, everyone. KJ here. Hope everyone had a great weekend. Wayne and we obviously went out on the lake yesterday. We couldn't go out Saturday because it was rainy. As I look out my front window, it looks like it rained overnight. It's overcast. Temperatures are not too awful. They haven't gotten too bad. But they're going to get cold, and as many of you know, KJ's gearing up to deal with my seasonal depression. Uh, I love to be outdoors. I love to get out and be around nature and do yard work and all of that stuff. But when winter rolls around, KJ is not bundling up to go out and do anything. Good morning, Shannon Commit. Good morning, Tina Reddington. Kim Top, good morning. Tina says, I have one eye awake. There you go. Good morning, Donna Donald. Janelle Murphy, good morning. I live for now. Good morning, everyone. I have to always remind myself that some of y'all are not actually getting up in the morning. Some of y'all are in the evening. So thank you so much for seeing KJ look like shit as I roll out of bed, go to the coffee maker, get my coffee. But I've got some beautiful rays ahead of me during my day with all of you. Donna Donald says it's 46 and sunny here. Good morning, Stephanie Willow, Rachel Black, Bonnie Baker, Olive Heatley. Good morning and good afternoon, Olive. Oh, thank you, Donna. I'll take a compliment from another fellow woman any day of the week, because I know most of the time women don't damn snide you. It's the men you got to worry about. It's the men that want to tell you every damn thing in the world, huh? Hello, Jax Gustafson. So anyway, folks, when I opened up Coffee with KJ, it was kind of just a way for us to stay connected, obviously. And it's also a way to keep up on things that we're researching and analyzing and all this stuff. And as many of you know, KJ, I said I was going to try to be disciplined on Fridays. Every time I plan to do something, it doesn't work out properly. But then again, that's just the way my life goes. And so there's something that has been, pulling at me for a long time now. And you'll know what I'm talking about here in a minute. It comes down to my theories about this case. And in specific, now that, we're going forward, Chad Daybell, that's where I'm trying to stay focused. It's hard to do, y'all. But I have been doing a lot in the background, in my own perspective and thinking and just excited that if I do share it, that I will get your perspective, because isn't that what it's really all about? It's one thing for me to say, this is what I see through my own perspective. What do y'all think? I'm looking for those roads of discovery. I'm looking for those ways to see things differently. Hey, I can't see it like you, and you can't see it like me, or maybe sometimes we might intersect. But for the most part, I am seeking your perspective. Good morning, Diane Renee. Good morning, NF Mom. Good morning, Norma Gorilla. So where am I going with all this on a Monday? Well, I'm going to try, y'all. This week, I want to stay focused in on this core theory of the prosecutor in Chad Daybell's case. Y'all know, and I know that I've already said what I'm going to say about and or others. It's a damn shame. But I do want to stick with that this week. But I also want to look through the lens of my theory. Okay? My theory. And what is it? Why hasn't Chad Daybell filed for divorce? And my theory is to keep Lori quiet. Not only about Idaho, but also Arizona. Hey, that sounds pretty on the level there, doesn't it, y'all? Chad Daybell does not file for divorce because if he can just kind of keep Lori calm and thinking in her own freaked out mind that her and Chad are got this beautiful divine love or whatever, that she will continue to protect Chad Daybell. And the best way that I'm able to kind of look at that is to look at the state's prosecuting team's motion opposing John Pryor's motion in limine. What am I saying? Well, y'all, we've already kind of talked about it, where John Pryor wants to use he wants to use this relative culpability argument. John Pryor wants to put distance between these evil lust birds for one reason. To shoot down the actual conspiracy aspect of the case. In essence, to say, Lori is more culpable, or Lori is more involved, or Lori did more than Chad Daybell. If John Pryor could use this as a defense, sympathy from jury could happen, y'all. If he could use this, and remember, Judge Boyce did not really rule on all of that at the last motion hearing. Judge Boyce, he basically said, if any of this comes up in trial, then we'll deal with it. So he didn't go along with John Pryor's little sneaky shit there, right? But if he can get sympathy from a jury that Chad was whooped, and that Lori ran the ship and all this and that, not only would it garner sympathy from a juror, perhaps, but it could also, y'all, be a vehicle to get the death penalty taken off the table, if John Pryor could get that in. So, going back to this theory that we're going to be discussing this week, why hasn't Chad Daybell filed for divorce? Well, he's got to keep Lori quiet. And we've got to look at this whole core theory of the state's case against Chad Daybell, because they're saying that there's really no difference, that this is all about conspiracy, and that they were even Steven and equal. Donna Donald says Lori may want to let him out and set him free to finish his dang stupid made-up missions, says Donna Donald. Well, Donna, I think it's weird that, I know a defense team is going to do what they can to get a death penalty off the table for any of their clients, but you would think that Lori would be like, no, I got to go on to my next probation. Go ahead. Give me the death penalty. Let's make it quick so I can go on and be someone other than Elena, Lily, Phoebe, whatever. Janelle Murphy says he didn't divorce Tammy, so maybe there's a possibility he won't divorce Lori. But yeah, he'll throw her under the bus. It depends on if he still believes his BS, in my opinion. And really, y'all, Janelle, I thought about that, actually. When the police walked up and Lori was in her little turquoise bikini sitting in the chair in Hawaii, and Chad was sitting in the other chair. If he had her so convinced, the only thing I can come up with in any of that is when the police left, Chad, if she was so convinced, y'all, which I don't believe, but let's just for sake of argument, he probably said the dark canes are closing in. You know what I'm saying? He's probably See, he did. I do believe, y'all. I do believe Chad added things along the way and kept moving. He added things along the way that she was talking to him about things, and he just knew what she liked. He would have never said anything about killing the children or having a plan to kill the children unless she wanted that to happen. All she had to do was say, no, Chad, my children are light. They're going to go on with us. We're going to be like the freaking Brady Bunch. We're going to do the 7 missions to accomplish together and everything, Chad. You know what I'm saying? So, Janelle, when you talk about, Chad, the way he feels about Lori at this point, I think the only thing he's thinking of is just keep her quiet. And who knows, y'all? In their twisted endorsing and espousing talk, their stupid ass talk, maybe when they left to go back to Hawaii to run from everybody and run from the fact that everything was, closing down and everything else, maybe they had talks with one another. Maybe Chad and Lori said, well, if we get arrested or if you get arrested, it's the Dark Canes. Look what they did to Jesus, blah, blah, blah. They could have said any of this. They could have had a plan in place for if one or both were arrested. I mean, they sure as hell conversed a lot about how to accomplish the murders of the children and Tammy. So, if they could do that, then they definitely, and then their code speak and all the things that they developed and the way that they were able to talk to each other when Lori was in jail and they found the children on June 9th of 2019, you could tell that they had at least been around each other long enough to know that if things were kind of softly spoken or something like that, that kind of led you to a conclusion in their own twisted thoughts. As husband and wife, can she testify against him? Also still wonder why he was not charged in Charles's murder because he called the funeral home, says Shannon Commit. Well, Shannon Commit, those are some good questions. First, let me just say this. There's nothing that holds either of them from, in my view, and I don't think I'm wrong, that they could, because it involves children. That's why they could if they wanted to. But really, y'all, let's just look at it. Say Chad came to Lori's trial and testified against her. Does anybody really want to believe a damn word that asshole has to say? Turn that around. If Lori came into Chad's trial, would anybody believe that evil, diabolical hussy? Why would the state even want it? I mean, and there would have to be what? Some kind of deal made for the testimony? I don't think so. And as far as Charles's murder, the reason Chad Daybell was not arrested and charged with anything in Charles's murder is because Arizona said there wasn't enough evidence. I disagree. But then, someone could say that Lori ran the ship and she said, Chad, I need you to call the funeral home for me. Wonder why she didn't get Alex to do it. Wonder why she didn't get out. Wonder why she didn't do it. That's a good question, isn't it? Why did Chad Daybell call the funeral home when Lori could have done it? She sure as hell didn't have a problem calling the insurance company, right? And since Alex licked Lori's ass, not literally, but you know what I mean, he would have done anything she said. Maybe this is Lori's way of, in Chad's eyes, Chad's like, she sucked me in. Well, maybe he didn't know, which I do believe he knew. Y'all know where I stand. But we're looking at all areas. And she's like, do this for me, Chad. I'm just so upset about it. Or do this for me, Chad, because you and I had this conspiracy to kill Charles for his $1 million life insurance policy. And we did it. Alex and I did it. Now it's your turn, Chad. Y'all, there is nothing out of the realm of possibility for these damn crazy ass people. Pure and simple. Sam Willis says he had a funeral experience. Good morning, Rusted Night. So I want to say up front, so y'all will know, unless something really big drops on Chad Daybell this week, that I am going to be looking at this theory, and I'm going to, of Chad Daybell and John Pryor's trying to distance this whole situation with Chad and Lori. Also, the state of Idaho's core theory. It worked in Lori's trial. Will it work in Chad Daybell's? Rachel Black says he was probably just trying to do something to help and impress her. It could be as simple as that, Rachel Black. You're right. As I said, there is nothing out of the realm of possibility with these people. So, it could be as simple as that. So, what we're going to do is this week, I'm not going to do the whole thing. I'm just going to break it down. Y'all know how I am with legal documents. I usually try to get those in, but I also have my own thoughts and theories and analysis on things. And we'll just see what happens. And just to give y'all a heads up, because maybe some of y'all are not interested in this at all. Maybe, there's just other areas that you're interested in. Rusted Knight says, wonder if the remaining evidence withheld from Lori's trial references Chad and Charles's murder. Well, that's a good question, Rusted Knight, now that you've said it. We know that 404B material was able to be admitted in Lori's trial. What I mean by that, and Archie and them were against it, it is one of the appeals issues of Lori's conviction, in that they were able to bring up all that happened in Arizona in Lori's trial. Why would they bring it up in Chad's trial if he hasn't been charged? You see, that might answer that question. I know what you're asking. The remaining evidence in Chad Daybell's trial, in my opinion, will be more narrowly focused on what we didn't hear in Lori's trial, obviously, because it's not evidence that we know about. But it's going to go toward more of Tammy to prove that he actually murdered her, first-degree murder. I think that's what we're going to hear about. I think we'll also hear from Tammy's family a little bit more on specificity on things that are related to Chad's guilt. Yes, you're right, Rusted Knight. There are so many open questions left. And so that in and of itself leads me to want to set this up about Chad Daybell, the core theory being the state of Idaho is even Steven with Lori and Chad, and just to see where it might lead us in relation to Chad's culpability, which we know, Lori, it was her children, and that's what a hurdle that has to be, jumped, basically. It'd be different if this was a death penalty case over the murder of his wife and there was nothing else involved. But because 2 of the 3 victims were Lori's children and she is a freaked out maniac, she's no mother. I don't care how well she was in years past. It don't matter about any of that. When the final thing you do as a mother is murder your children, right? I mean, you kind of look back and say maybe that was an act. So I want to go through some of this. You'll see that I'm doing this and everything, and then Wednesday, Friday, we'll wrap it up. But the state did file opposition to John Pryor's, motion in limine, where they wanted to limit, John Pryor wanted to limit the state to just basically, the way John Pryor puts it, that Lori was the mastermind, Lori was the one running the ship, and that's what he wants. Number one, again, to have a sympathy from a juror, and number 2, to get the death penalty off the table. That's my view. So I looked at the legal document, and the state basically is letting everyone know in this document that John Pryor put little cherry-picked things from Lori's trial. I can envision it, whether it was John Pryor or someone else. They got a hold of Lori's transcript, and they underlined everything that showed Lori's guilt and that it looked like Lori was running the ship and all this and that. Which, why wouldn't he do that? I think any defense attorney would want to do that. He's doing his job. It's bullshit, but he's doing it. And so the state responds to that motion in limine. And again, Judge Boyce has not ruled that the state has to do it the way John Pryor is saying. But there are different paragraphs within this legal document where the state rebuffs rebuffs John Pryor bringing up these cherry-picked statements and takes us down memory lane of what the state's core theory was. And let's not forget, y'all, these paragraphs and what John Pryor is pointing out were closing arguments. Guess what? That's not evidence. Closing arguments, opening statements, those are just guides of how the state wants to guide the jury in their theory. It's not evidence. So, I don't know. I mean, I guess it was the only thing John Pryor could do. But we're going to go through these paragraphs not only to remind ourselves of the state's core theory, but we're also going to kind of look at it and see, Chad Daybell, how culpable was he? Why does he want to not get a divorce from Lori, right? He wants to keep her quiet, y'all. So the state brings up their in context paragraph of their closing argument to rebuff John Pryor's little snippet there. And this is what it said. It says, let's talk about religion for 1 second. This is Rob Wood in his closing argument. Let's talk about religion for 1 second because we've heard a lot about religion. It does not matter what they make sure to put this in bold, y'all. They believed. It matters what they did. They can believe whatever they want, but when they use that to justify homicide, that changes. They use religion as a tool to manipulate others. Lori manipulated Alex Cox through religion. She manipulated Chad through emotional and sexual control. They manipulated their friends through the use of religion. Let's talk about how she groomed Alex Cox. Now, that was the end of that paragraph. Well, let's look at that. Does anyone want to believe that anytime Lori manipulated or lied or did anything in the furtherance of a conspiracy, it was because she wanted Chad between her legs? That she wanted to have sex with Chad? Now, I know that there was a part in Ian's document where it talked about having sex a lot, or maybe it was the other thing, that letter, I forgot what it was titled, where Lori liked to have sex 3 or 4 times a day and all of this. I think that was this anonymous letter that I feel like it was Melanie Gibb or David Warwick that wrote. But the bottom line is that Lori was not doing any of this because she wanted to have sex with that nasty ass man, okay? She used her sexual appeal. She used what was between her legs and her whole body to seduce Chad into it. And that is not saying Chad is a victim. Any dumbass who looks at a woman like Lori, y'all, it's true. At the time she was trying to take in and seduce Chad, this was her last rodeo. This is the last big seduction of Lori, right? She'd already gotten her way through ex-husbands, get tired of them, get rid of them, murder them, whatever. But now she knows her time is ticking. She's probably attending more Botox appointments. She knows her shit's getting older. She's not in the youth of her life anymore. She wants to hold on to that youth. And what better way to do that is to say, I'm going translated. My menstrual cycles, blah, 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 right? So, Lori manipulated Chad through emotional and sexual control. And if the state's core theory is sex, money, and power, Lori took sex to get money and power. Chad, on the other hand, he used what she wanted to believe and what he thought he had was power. Is that through the priesthood? I mean, this crazy stuff. What? I don't know. I mean, Mr. Seeing Beyond the Veil, Mr. Light and Dark Percentages, Mr. I Can Tell You Who You Was in a Past Life, all this stupid stuff. He had a power and he wanted sex, and in order to hold on to his power to move forward with the bull crap he was telling Lori, what would he have had to have? He would have had to have money. If anybody thinks that Lori was going to go and be with Chad, and he was going to live in his little house right there, and they were going to live happily ever after, they got another thing coming. It wasn't just about getting with this guy that she felt like, that he was going to take her places. You know why? If she thought that he was going to take her places, it's because he's damn filling her head full of shit too. He's telling her all this stuff. Does anyone believe that Lori is just going to assume that Chad Daybell can take her somewhere for money and power? The only way that Lori would have assumed that Chad could take her anywhere with money and power is if he was telling her these things. And, we can throw in there this 144,000 stuff and all that, and how Melanie Gibb talks about, well, we're going to be staying in the nicer accommodations, and everybody else is going to be in the tents. You think about Chad and his stupid pendulum. You think about all the energy work crap. You think about all the things. He made himself out to be someone who was powerful. And she wanted that. He was raised in that. She wanted that. She thought he was going to take her somewhere. She'd read his books. You know it and I know it. When it comes to Chad, I think Lori coached him how to get the money. Well, you think so? I mean, you think Lori told Chad, you've got to get over there with Tammy, and you got to sit down and explain to Tammy that there needs to be an increase on the life insurance there, because we know good and well Tammy signed that. Some people say, well, KJ, he could have forged that or something like that. Y'all, it says it in the indictment that Tammy was. She was there. She signed it. He told her what he told her. Maybe he dressed it up like, we've got a long life ahead of us, Tammy. And, as things click along, we've got to increase this life map. We got a lot of years to deal with all this, Tammy. Through our golden years, that son of a bitch probably told Tammy that they had this long life together. Y'all know it. Y'all know it. Rusted Knight says, absolutely, Lori coached Chad. Okay, so maybe Lori did, y'all. Okay, I absolutely respect all. This is what I'm looking for, right? But to say Lori coached Chad, is that saying that Lori was smarter than Chad when it came to money? That Chad wasn't smart enough to know that really, after Charles's $1 million wasn't going to be in the bag, and Brandon didn't get shot, Melanie P wasn't going to be able to share with the cult, that it really was left in his lap? Look what Lori did before Chad. I'm sure he encouraged Tammy, says Janelle Murphy. Well, there you go. He did take her somewhere. She's in prison, says Tina Reddy. Lori, I am the king of the 144,000. I can see beyond the veil. I got one of these crazy ass pendulums. I can do light and dark. And Lori, I am sending you to a very special place, Lori. Good one, Tina. She could coach all she wants, but the bottom line is his choices. Excellent point, CSI. Y'all, Chad Daybell, he'd been to college. He knew the difference between right and wrong. This whole thing about relative culpability and all that, it don't fly in conspiracy, first of all, and the state points that out. When it comes to conspiracy, John Pryor, absolutely. Just didn't even think about that. But anyway, the bottom line is Chad Daybell, according to CSI, and I agree, crowdsourced illuminations, is that Chad, he had to have thought about this. Wasn't rash or just sudden decisions on Chad Daybell. If you look at the framework of what he was helping to endorse and espouse, he was the freaking writer of it all, right? He was the one that was, well, yes, they got rid of Charles's Hipla or this other, Garrett spirit, but now even a worse one's come in there. His name is Hippolos. Give me a break. Good morning, Leanne Jordan. Good morning, Susan Honaker. So, again, the state is letting the judge know in terms of John Pryor wanting to use this relative culpability thing and make the state stick to this narrow way of doing things. They're taking John Pryor's statements of Lori was running the ship or whatever and saying, see, the state's theory was that Lori was in charge. But then the state says another paragraph, Lori uses sex to manipulate Chad, and Chad seeks confirmation from Lori repeatedly. And, I'll wait for a second on that. July 13th, he's having a conversation with her about when they can spend time together and about Tammy's passing. And at the end, what does he say? Please ask about that. He's asking her to confirm. This is what Rob Wood is saying in his closing argument. Why? Because Lori and Chad are driving this together. That's what John Pryor leaves out, y'all. It's their plan to be together, to get rid of the obstacles. Chad tells Lori that he's been instructed to focus his efforts on Hillary, who we have heard from testimony and other places in the iCloud is established as Tylee Ryan. What does Lori say? She doesn't say, you know what? Maybe we shouldn't kill my kids. She says, okay, find out her percentages for me and JJ's. And when Chad talks about Tylee's low death percentage, meaning she's close to death, and how JJ needs to follow Amy into the light, ladies and gentlemen, we all know what that means to go into the light. Chad Daybell, is talking about a young boy's death, and he assured JJ that Chad would be there. James would love and take care of his mom because JJ is going to be gone because he's followed someone in the light. Now, we remember that, we recall it, and I'm not beating a dead horse. What I want to say is that this whole core theory of the state, they're letting everyone know they're every bit of they, them, and then they start pointing out what Chad Daybell has done. And it ain't because you can look at what Chad's done and say, did Lori make him do this? No. It goes back to Chad seeks confirmation from Lori repeatedly. Folks, the only reason Chad Daybell is seeking confirmation from Lori, he's basically wanting her to be pleased with him. And it's my view that when he seeks confirmation from Lori, he wants to put her at ease so she'll lay back, spread her legs, and he can jump in with a 2x4. That's what Chad Daybell looks at as confirmation. And then this whole thing about he's having a conversation with her about when they can spend time together and about Tammy's passing. It's all about, hey, Lori, I want to get with you. I want to have sex. Let's go have sex together. And I'm sure Lori brought up about, go be with your family. I don't want to be in the middle of it. Just go be happy. The bottom line is it's no more than Chad saying, I want to spend time and have sex with you, Lori. And the only way that I'm going to get you sexually aroused is if we talk about Tammy and her dying. Right? I mean, these are just my opinions. So that's just another thing right there that the state is pointing out that Chad it isn't like just all you have to do is one overt act into the completion of a conspiracy to be guilty of conspiracy. Chad and Lori were even. Stephen, we know this, but I'm trying to prove a point here. So then we get to a next one in Rob Wood's closing argument where he's trying to lay up against his closing argument with what John Pryor is trying to put a little snippet in there to say, see, this is all Lori. So Rob Wood, in the closing argument of Lori's trial, says she meets Chad in October of 2018. You have seen plenty of evidence of the affair that took place after they met. July 11th of 2019, Lori's brother Alex shoots and kills Charles Vallow, Lori's husband. September 8th and 9th, Tylee Ryan, Lori Vallow's daughter, is killed. September 22nd and 23rd, J.J. Vallow, her son, is killed. October 19th of 2019, Tammy Daybell is killed. These are not coincidences. And there is one common thread through these murders: Lori Vallow. She is the one person who ties all these together. You heard about the investigation and how it got started, looking for a Jeep that was used in an attempted shooting of Brandon Boudreaux on October 2nd. You heard about Chad and his life insurance. Pointing out, and then he goes on in the legal document saying, pointing out that Lori Daybell was the common thread between the deaths of Charles Vallow, Tylee Ryan, J.J. Vallow, and Tammy Daybell, and the attempted murder of Brandon Boudreaux, is no way diminishes Chad Daybell's guilt or culpability. The use of the phrase common thread actually implicates Chad Daybell by tying him through his mistress and his wife, and then wife Lori Daybell, to the deaths of each of the victims of murder and the attempted murder of Brandon Boudreaux, which, you know, that's a mouthful, right? Well, it really comes down to this. Chad ends up marrying Lori, and there's no way that Lori kept Chad from knowing that she had children, first of all, because he'd been around them. There's been testimony of that. Chad also knows quite well about what happened over there in Arizona. I believe Chad Daybell was absolutely in the thick of it with Lori and Alex. I think they were going to use that $1 million to go on and do whatever they were going to do. If they'd have got that $1 million, y'all, and I know I'm armchair quarterbacking, but if they'd have got that $1 million, Lori'd have just sent JJ and Tylee off to live with Kobe or Kay and Larry, and they would have been happy to have them. Or Summer, right? She would have got her $1 million. She would have went off, right? That's exactly what I believe. Olive Heatley says she wanted to see how committed he was to her. Well, he must have been, Olive, very committed to Lori, to go out in his backyard with pickaxes, with some sort of accelerant, starting a fire back there. We know it wasn't limb debris. We also know that Chad was very dedicated in that he dug that grave for JJ. We've already talked about all it would take to do all that. There was a time, maybe about 3 years ago, I said, well, could Lori have just said, Chad, something terrible's happened. The kids, they just died. It must have been an evil spirit. And Chad got worried because he was in love with Lori and just helped him. He assisted after the fact. Well, according to the text messages in Lori's trial now, that shoots that theory out the window, right? It ain't going to work. Because Chad was writing it as he went. And he would only write down or give a revelation that would line up to the way Lori was speaking. He would not have wanted her to be upset with him at all. I mean, for goodness sake, y'all, go be with your wife. You go be happy. In other words, I'm not going to give you my poontang. I'm not going to give you my big muff. You just go be with Tammy, the woman that you say is like living with a warden and you're like Harry Potter under the stairs. Y'all know it. Eric Jasper says that text, though, to Tammy about stay away from the freshly dug area is going to sink the Chin's proverbial ship. Exactly, Eric. He wanted Tammy to think if she saw it, what is that ground disturbance? He needed to account for all that, y'all. You know it, I know it. Rachel Black says he wrote creepy books about cemetery stuff and dead bodies before he met Lori. And, you know, I'm sure Lori read all of his books. But don't you find it interesting, y'all, that of all the books that she could have been sitting in Hawaii in her little turquoise bikini reading one of Chad Daybell's books. Now, wouldn't that have stroked his ego? But it wasn't. It was Visions of Glory. And I think Chad Daybell, deep in his heart, as popular as that book was and that religion, I think Chad would have wanted it to be one of his books, and it probably made him so jealous. What's interesting I want to bring up also, y'all, is I got to thinking about this. When Lori was served those papers, and then she was arrested finally, and Chad went back to the mainland, he went back to Idaho. We know he tried to get a concrete slab, a modular home dealership or something over there. You know, he was covering the tracks and everything. At some point, it had to have been before Lori was arrested. They had to have. I mean, y'all, they had to have come to the conclusion that the freaking role playing was over. They had to have, I mean, bare bones. When the police left and Lori was sitting there reading that subpoena to get the kids and all that, to produce the kids. I mean, the only other thing I could possibly think for Chad to keep it going is that these are dark canes and that, you know, God is going to protect us or something. I have not figured that out. And I still haven't figured out. And I don't know I ever will. I thought I would get more insight into Lori's trial. And maybe I'm holding out hope that I will in Chad's trial. You know, this whole idea of, did they not think that people were going to miss these kids? I mean, the logical thing would be that they were so enmeshed in this role play and stuff that they thought it was going to be the end of the world. And I think there was some talk about, you know, there was going to be so many earthquakes and all this and that nobody was going to be looking for the kids. But then you get into this other question. The first question that I don't have answered is, how did they think they were going to get away with this? Specifically with the kids, I mean, hell, as far as I'm concerned, knowing how crazy these people are, when they didn't really see anything wrong with Tammy's death and ruled it, you know, the way they did with no autopsy, Chad was like, see, we are blessed. They're not going to do anything, right? And then, of course, when Lori left Arizona to go to Idaho, and in their mind, they didn't think anything was, they just thought everybody believed that it was a self-defense thing. See, the Lord is shielding you with a force field that keeps them from realizing that you're fighting the evilness in this world. You know, the queen of the 144,000, the warrior of all the millennia. You know, that's the only thing I can say. Hello, Kathy. How you doing? Kathy says, just popping in to say hi to all the Rays. Miss you guys. We miss you too, Kathy. I know you've been real busy. Janelle Murphy says, earthquake, and if they were silent. That is the one, that's the first question. And the second question is obviously the one that I don't feel comfortable with my own answer or anyone else's answer for that matter that I've heard so far. Why bury the children in Chad Daybell's backyard? I still don't understand that. It's, I mean, I'm reaching y'all that they had to know where they were to keep them safe. It's the only thing I can think of. So there in and of itself is another thing that John Pryor has cherry-picked something, and the state gives the judge the context and absolutely shows that this was about them both. They did have to focus in on Lori at her trial, but they say their core theory is still the same. Another thing that was said when John Pryor was talking about, you know, see, here's evidence that Lori was in charge and she's more culpable, that Rob Wood said in Lori's closing statement, let's talk about religion for 1 second, because we've heard a lot about religion. It does not matter what they believed. It matters what they did. They can believe whatever they want. But when they, because they keep putting that word they in bold, y'all, to prove a point that this wasn't all a closing argument about Lori being the mastermind. But when they use that to justify homicide, that changes. They used religion as a tool to manipulate others. Lori manipulated Alex Cox through religion. She manipulated Chad through emotional and sexual control. They manipulated their friends through the use of religion. And I know I said that before, but there's a different point that I want to make. Does anybody want to believe that Melanie Gibb, David Warwick, Melanie P., Audrey Bartero, and these others, Serena Sharp, and Christina Atwood, and all that, does anyone believe that these people are so easily manipulated through all of this? I don't think so. I think that it just, these people were ready. They were ready to feel more powerful. And if Chad and Lori were going to give them the storyline and say, we've got all these powers, let's get in this casting and all this bullshit, they were going to go right with it. Good morning, Daisy Shoeshine. Tina Reggie says so they could keep track of the kids, plus he planned to put a cement pad there. Right, Tina, that's the only thing I can think of. Shannon Commit says, to me, Lori's saying that JJ and Tylee are happy and busy at her sentencing. I think that is a confession. At no time did she deny that she was responsible for their deaths. Well, Shannon Commit, you got to add in there that she says there was no murders. That's what she says. So anything she says after that, it's up for interpretation, obviously. Great point. Appreciate your perspective. But she doesn't want to. She's disassociated herself from it. And, anybody can disassociate. KJ disassociates from things from time to time. She just does it so she can live with herself because she's a piece of shit. That's just my view. The whole lot of them need charged with conspiracy to commit murder, for starters. Until all involved have been through to justice, justice won't happen. I absolutely agree with that as well, Eric Jasper. So there are patterns that emerge through the digital evidence and through these iCloud accounts. This is Rob Wood speaking at Lori's sentencing about Chad and Lori's affair. You've read and you'll have back in deliberation the James and Elena story, their future together. This was all a plan, like I said at the beginning, a plan for them to be together without obstacles. Obstacles is a word they used. You learn about the relationship between Chad, Lori, and Alex, and how Lori is the conduit of information to Alex. Alex does what Lori tells him. A plan to remove obstacles, and those obstacles, Tylee Ryan, JJ Vallow, and their spouses, Charles Vallow and Tammy Daybell. So Lori, she was a conduit to Alex, but in some ways, I disagree with that being the whole thing, because from the point I believe, this is just an opinion, that Chad is, I give you a blessing. The recording of Lori and Alex and Chad crying, this blessing to Alex and everything. And then you see the evidence of all of that. After that, the blessing in and of itself was in Alex's truck when it was impounded from Zulima's house over there. They absolutely, Lori and Chad, they were the conduit, I think. They say Lori was the conduit to Alex. I don't know that Alex would have just only listened to Lori at a certain point in all this. In other words, what I'm saying is it didn't take Lori feeding Alex anything for him to go ahead and do it. I think at some point Alex would hear directly from Chad without Lori just going along with it or anything like that. I think that Alex listened to Lori, and I think Alex listened to Chad. So this whole thing that Alex had to get his sisters okay, yes, to a degree, but I think at some point that it shows in the evidence that Alex was over at Chad's house on other days that he was not, that the crucial days of taking the children out there. I think Alex and Chad became real good buddies. And I think Chad laid it on thick even more. I think at the beginning, Lori would tell Alex, I've heard some interesting things about you, Alex. I can't wait to tell you, Alex. But there came a point where Alex absolutely, like he says in his own words, I believe it 100%. I think that Chad was dealing directly with Alex. And this goes back to that whole idea of the man being the, the priesthood holder or whatever. And I think Alex really probably believed his sister was on equal footing with that, because she had already expressed that in a in-home meeting that Melanie gives, that she was on equal footing with men. I just think it wasn't just Lori telling Alex. The whole of that portion of the state's argument makes clear again that Chad and Lori Daybell engaged in a criminal plan together. The state has mentioned earlier in their arguments how Chad and Lori both recruited and groomed Alex Cox. While the defendant is entitled to argue what he wants, he is not entitled to misrepresent what the state said or force his own theory of the case on the state. Ding, 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 ding. So, the state is hitting slam dunk after slam dunk, and this is exactly the reason why the judge didn't rule on this and say, state, you've got to make it look like Lori was the mastermind. First of all, you can't limit a state prosecuting team. You can't limit them. They don't need to say the opposite, but you can't limit them. It's their burden to prove the case. So, in the state's motion, they go on to talk about another thing that Rob Woods said in the closing. 4 days before Tammy is shot at, big news about Tammy. Please let me know if you're awake and can talk. I love you. Chad goes into this conversation about Tammy being in limbo and there's a demonic entity in her. He goes on, and then what does he say? Please seek a confirmation on this. Why is that important? Because Chad is not going to act without Lori saying so. Seek a confirmation. Not fully sure of the timing for removal, but once your actions verify the differences, I don't want to wait. And he's asking Lori for confirmation on that. Okay, so that's what was said. And it does seem like Lori is like, yes, go ahead and murder her, right? But that's not at all what it was. First of all, Chad Daybell came up with this bullshit. Second of all, the only reason he's including Lori in the give me confirmation, and all that, is because she's already talked about, and he's got her convinced that they're on equal footing. They're on equal footing, and it affirms to Lori that she's got the power just as Chad does. And so for Chad not to include her in that, and by the way, to say that to Lori, I need a confirmation from you. You think she was dang juicy when she heard that? You think she was getting sexually aroused? You know it. He knew she would. He knew that's what she wanted more than anything, was to be married to him, and the only way to marry him is either to divorce Tammy or murder her ass. And obviously, Chad wasn't going to. He'd already told Lori before Lori left Arizona he wasn't going to divorce Tammy. So maybe, just maybe, Lori did coach Chad about the life insurance. But then again, Chad Daybell's not so stupid that he can't figure this shit out for himself. Once again, the defendants refused to provide the court with the full quote, diminishes his argument. In that portion of the state's closing argument, the state describes messages from Chad to Lori about his religious justification to murder his wife. The fact that Chad is having the conversation with Lori and seeking her approval only enhances the conspiracy. So again, y'all, it was Chad that came to Lori. There isn't text messages in there that Lori says, Chad, I need you to get rid of that Julie Rowe running around Tammy Daybell's house and knocking on the door. That was another of Chad's things, by the way. It was Chad bringing up the reasoning behind, just as he brought up the reasoning and something that Lori could latch on to about the children. Lori did not come up with this zombie shit on her own. It was Chad Daybell. Chad could have very easily told Lori when she came to Idaho, Lori, I've seen it. The children, they were dark and everything, but and in the back of his mind, I just can't do this. I'm afraid we'll get busted. He could have told her anything. He could have said, Lori, I think the children need to be spared. He could have said anything. Lori, I've seen it, Lori. Tammy, the spirit left Tammy, and so I really have no justification to murder her. No, it was Chad's evil ass imagination that strung Lori along, and Lori knew that what Chad was telling her wasn't true. She just decided that she would pretend. Y'all, this is my view. I think you know how you want to believe something until, she wanted to believe it. Her overarching goal was power and money. Chad's overarching goal was sex. And to get that, he would need to show Lori his power, i.e., through his stupid revelations, and he had to get her money. Pure and simple. Donna Donald says they wanted to do this ritual with kids. Chad is a dang sadistic monster, says Donna Donald. Similarly, the defendant relies on, Chad Daybell relies on the following statement from the state's rebuttal closing. What does Chad say? Just grab me by the storm and I'll follow you to the ends of the universe. Not will you follow me, Lori, I will follow you. Again, the defendant does not provide the full context of the state's quote. Further, it bears repeating that Chad conspiring with his mistress to commit murder is not exculpatory. Chad Daybell sexting with Lori while conspiring to murder his own wife and her children is not exculpatory, nor does it make him less culpable or less guilty than Lori. The quote in question was in response to Lori Daybell's attempt in her closing argument to blame the murders on Chad Daybell. Now let's stop there. The state of Idaho's prosecuting team right here in this motion is coming out in legal documents to say that Archie did indeed attempt in his closing argument to blame the murders on Chad Daybell. I don't see that. Maybe we'll have to look at that again. But the state is saying that. I don't recall it. I don't recall Lori blaming Chad or Alex. Do y'all? But the state says it right here in this legal document. But this is what they're talking about. Rob Wood says, and just quickly because the defense brought up the text again, we've bolded here where Lori is bringing up the kids. Then they're talking about death percentages from Lori. And the text message says, okay, find out her percentage, meaning Hillary, who was Tylee. Find out this for me and JJ's. They mentioned the storm text, but they didn't tell you all the text. What does Chad say? Just grab me by the storm and I'll follow you to the ends of the universe. Not you will follow me, Lori. I will follow you. Don't let Lori pin this all on one other person. She was 100% involved in this, and all the evidence points to that. The quote in whole shows the state arguing that Lori is actually seeking confirmation from Chad regarding death percentages for her children. Contrary to the defendant's claim that his liability is less than Lori's or that Lori was calling all the shots, this argument and evidence provided by the state show that Chad Daybell was just as guilty for providing religious justification for murder, and that Lori looked to Chad for that religious guidance and justification. And if the state says that Lori was looking to Chad for this justification and all that, and she's still convicted of life in prison without no parole, she's going to be there, then Chad Daybell, surely this whole thing looks more like Chad was running the ship. But then again, y'all, KJ says it. They're even Steven. They were even Steven in it all. Olive says, I'd love to know what was their plan if they hadn't been caught and when the money ran out. Well, Olive, I'm assuming that they probably would have continued to murder people. It's my opinion, and I could be wrong. When they were in Hawaii, they knew, y'all. They knew shit was fixing to happen, and I think at some point they were going to go off into another country. Perhaps where Alex used to go to hook up with hookers. And Alex got that idea from his own father, by the way, Barry. The bottom line is it could have been Colombia. It could have been another country. And what could anybody do? All they had to do was drop off the face of the planet. They didn't have to keep up. Kay and Larry's going to be able to, hey, we're not being able to talk to JJ and they're over in a foreign country. Nobody's going to do anything about that. They were stupid enough to believe they could go to Hawaii, which is in America, and it didn't work out well for them at all. Yes, great point there also, Rusted Knight. Hold on, the video where Chad grabs Lori's ass is a big deal in Chad's trial. That is a really good point. I don't know how much you're meaning on that. What I get out of that is if Lori was in charge, he was getting away with groping her, it would seem to me that, if she was in charge, he would have been hands off. Lori had to withhold that sex and everything from time to time, y'all. She had to do it to keep Chad moving forward. She had to. And I'm not saying that she did all this. I'm just saying that it's just absolutely intriguing, really. It's amazing that they both were absolutely screwing each other, literally and mind game-wise. They both were doing it to one another. Even Steven. While the defendant provided snippets of quotes, never the full quote, to support his position that he is less guilty than Lori, the defendant ignored the vast majority of the state's closing argument. The defendant's claim of relative guilt or culpability does not survive even a cursory review of the state's closing argument. In regards to the murder of Tylee Ryan, the state argued Lori Vallow was responsible for Tylee's health and safety, but instead of protecting her, Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell, and Alex Cox conspired to murder her. Acting together, they caused Tylee's death. Tylee, was burned and buried in Chad Daybell's backyard. In regards to the murder of J.J. Vallow, the state argued J.J.'s body was placed in black plastic, and buried like a piece of trash in Chad Daybell's backyard. In regards to the murder of Tammy Daybell, the state argued the evidence is clear that Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell, and Alex Cox conspired to murder Tammy. Acting together, they caused Tammy's death. Says Rob Wood, when their first plan didn't work, they formed a second plan, and she was asphyxiated. Regarding overt acts by Chad and Lori Daybell, the state argued Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow espoused or endorsed religious beliefs for the purpose of justifying Tammy's homicide. There were text messages in regards to the conspiracy for Tammy between Chad and Lori regarding death percentages for Tammy. Chad Daybell obtained a burner phone. Alex Cox obtained a burner phone. All these steps taken toward furthering their conspiracy. Further on Tammy, text messages between Chad and Lori about Tammy being in limbo and Tammy being possessed by a spirit. In regards to Tammy, Chad co-signed a life insurance policy, increasing the amount of insurance he would get upon her death. Chad Daybell talking about overt acts. September 8th, he searched south-southwest wind and visited what is the definition of south-southwest wind direction. Why? Because the next day he knows. Chad Daybell knows he'll be burning Tylee Ryan in his fire pit, and he needs to know which way the wind will be blowing. You heard testimony of the officers who searched that account. This is the only time he searches wind directions, the only time. Referring to Tammy Daybell's phone and a text Chad sent to her on September 9th, I won't go into it. Y'all know the infamous text about the freaking raccoon. Then referring to Alex and Chad burning, dismembering, and burying Tylee Ryan, the state argued At 11:47 a.m., Alex is just north of Chad Daybell's residence and heading south. They've done the deed. They've burnt Tylee. They've dismembered her, and they buried her. Referring to Chad Daybell's communicating with Alex Cox minutes before Alex brought J.J. Vallow to Chad Daybell's property, the state argued there's a phone call, a 38-second phone call from Chad Daybell to Alex Cox that morning, 38 seconds. By 9:45, Alex is again on his way to Chad Daybell's house, this time with J.J. Vallow in tow. It was Chad that called Alex. How much was Lori a conduit to Alex? If Lori was with Alex, then why? Then why couldn't Lori have just given Alex the message? Why does Chad have to talk to Alex the morning that Alex transported JJ's body out there? Regarding June 9th, Chad Daybell's residence, the officer's observance of Chad Daybell's behavior. Let's talk about the crime scene, Chad Daybell's residence. You've seen this exhibit. You have all the pictures of the exhibit. I encourage you to take them back in deliberations and look at them. Upon discovering the raccoon text, upon reviewing Alex Cox's digital data, law enforcement serves a warrant. And they talk about it was Chad's text that led them to Tylee Ryan. It is noteworthy that the defendant is claiming the state only argued that Lori Daybell manipulated Chad Daybell. The following paragraph argued by the state at trial is abundantly clear that Chad and Lori Daybell engaged in religious manipulation of those around them. They did it together, and they did it as part of their plan to be together. And this is the part that, I'm cynical about, but you know how I feel about making deals with devils. But you heard from Zulema Pastanez, who heard from Melanie Gibb the description about castings. These descriptions of light and dark scales, you heard a lot about it. The only reason it matters is because it's the tool that they used to manipulate others. They used it to manipulate Melanie Boudreaux. They used it to manipulate Zulema, Melanie Gibb, Alex Cox. Again, who is the common thread here? It's Lori Vallow. We talked about sex in this case, how it was a motive of their affair. They had to remove obstacles so they could be together. Those conversations often turn sexual, always talking about their future together, their plan to be together. And finally, just as the state did not shy away from showing how Lori Daybell manipulated Chad Daybell with sex, the state did not shy away from arguing that Chad manipulated Lori with religion. The following paragraph, argued by the state, shows how the state established that Lori looked to Chad for religious guidance. August 10th, again, Lori initiating this conversation. Do you think there's a perfectly orchestrated plan to take the children and we just have to wait for it to be carried out? I feel lost, like I should be doing something to help. Not I think we shouldn't kill the Not that I think we shouldn't kill the children. Sorry, y'all. I should be doing something to help for the children to be taken. And Chad tells her there's a plan. What should I be doing? She says. What do I need to do to make this happen? That's what Lori's asking. And he tells her she's doing everything right. He said to just keep resolving the testicular issues so you are encumbered and fully free. So again, it was Chad, y'all. This endorsed and espoused religious beliefs. Lori could not move forward in any of this without Chad feeding her. Basically shit. And he could have fed her his shit that could have led her away from murder or anything like that. But then again, Chad needed to show his power. And in order to show his power, he had to have money. How is he going to do that? The only way he could, through insurance proceeds and all that. And Lori, what did she have to offer Chad? Right? All she had was what was between her legs. Susan Honecker says what they had in common was the church. Gene P said, did law enforcement ever interview the neighbor who witnessed the bonfire before he mysteriously passed away? Who all was there? Gene P, I believe there was something in, I don't know if it was in the probable cause affidavit, but something, I wish I could answer your question, but they said that there was some bonfires it was in the fall, which obviously y'all know September is fall time. So, and then this whole confusion about, it was in August. It was in August that one of the neighbors said that Garth had said to him, Dad shot a raccoon. So maybe he was setting it all up. Chad was setting it all up, in August to do what all that happened. I mean, I get confused about it sometimes. It's almost like the red herring, What were the rest of this group doing with their kids? I mean, somebody needs to ask Melanie Gibb that. Well, Donna Donald, the only thing I heard about Melanie Gibb's child said that she got all upset, I believe. It was at Chad's preliminary, or maybe it was at Lori's, where Melanie Gibb's child was visited by police, and the police asked if they'd seen Tylee or something, or JJ, and they said they had. And it almost was like an inference that Melanie Gibb was getting her child to lie about it or something. I don't know. Yeah, Donna Donald. People in that sort of area could kill a raccoon pretty often. And by the way, since I said it last time about there is nothing that holds John Pryor back from going over to that property, bringing some experts and everything to dig up the real raccoon that Chad was speaking of. Y'all know that's a crock of shit. John Pryor, that dang property belongs to John Pryor, right? Go figure. Good morning, Maria P. Tylee's body was put on the property, yes, while Tammy was gone to visit family members. Rusted Knight says Felony Fib was up to her neck in the whole scheme. Melanie Neese was too. So let's go back, y'all. As I have read, kind of rehashed a little bit of the state's core theory. And that is the theory that I want to work on this week. And I hope I'm going to leave a post on the community wall for all you that are interested in, delving into this whole aspect of why hasn't Chad filed for divorce. And my theory is a simple one: to keep Lori quiet. Keep Lori quiet about what? Not only the Idaho murders, but she is now in Arizona. Could something come out from her or someone else that implicates Chad more? Or could what happens in Lori's trial in Arizona, which I'm not covering, but it's very interesting anyway, that will they be able to get 404B in Arizona of Lori's conviction, or whether they'll just leave that out? And whether or not in Chad's trial, 404B material, which is a pattern, it's supposed to only show motive, and that's usually in the jury instructions. Whether or not, I don't think it can really be brought up, y'all. Or maybe it can, because if you're talking about conspiracy, Chad Daybell's trial, they should be able to bring that in about what happened in Arizona. Not to show that Chad was guilty of that, but to show the pattern and motive of them working in concert together. But then again, if Arizona says they have no evidence that Chad was in on it, I'm just not sure. I think perhaps maybe they can bring in Chad's trial the thing about Chad calling the funeral home, or any communications that they've got of Chad during that time in terms of 404B material. Olive says if Alex took insurance out for Zuzu, I think she may have been next. I'll tell you what, Olive, I think Zulema is full of shit. I think Zulema went into that police interview, and I think she wanted to get on the police's side. I think she'd do anything. That's what cockroaches do. They scurry away from what their involvement and stuff. Zulema was knee-deep in it. Zulema, Melanie Pulaski, David Warwick, Melanie Gibbon, all these other people, Audrey Bartario, these other witches and all this and that. Chad and Lori would have never had confirmation, bullshit confirmation, but at least, you know, Chad and Lori couldn't get big if they didn't have other people believing in them. So in essence, it's almost like this. Y'all remember that woman, Amy Carlson, the I Am Mother God or whatever? These people, she would have never got where she was at without these people getting around her and, you know, making her think, yes, we believe you. I mean, look what had happened to her. She ended up mummified with Christmas lights on her. You know? Chad and Lori were believed lock, stock, and barrel until the shit hit the fan. And then these people run away. They run away from their involvement. They played the role game, y'all. They played it. They enjoyed it. They had fun with it. They thought they were better than everyone else. And now, look at them. They're scurrying away like cockroaches. Really. Gene P says, I think Chad was proud of what he did, and the kids' remains was his trophy, and he wanted to put a concrete slab over the graves, then build Church of the Firstborn, right? Wow. That's a good theory, Gene P. That could be true, but I also believe Chad had to hide the bodies. Simple as that. It wouldn't surprise me if he was going to put a church on there, an evil-ass church. I mean, didn't they envision it? The weekend that Melanie Gibb and David Warwick went over to look at that piece of property, didn't they envision the Church of the Firstborn? Give me a break. So we're going to be talking about all this week, y'all. We're trying to hone in, and I am anyway, on the state's core theory, Chad Daybell's involvement in it all. The culpability argument's not going to stand, so why did I bring it up? Because ultimately, it's real easy for me to sit here and say, hey, Rays, Chad and Lori were even Steven. What we learned in Lori's trial outside of what was found out at Chad's preliminary hearing is something worth looking at. There were things we didn't know. Chad and Lori both were orgasmic. Evil and orgasmic about all the things that they were doing. And I would say that both of them are going to be living out a life of someone else getting their orgasm. And that's all I'll say on that. Donna Donald, I think they were envisioning the new temple going to be built nearby, real estate around God's house. There you go. Good morning, Leanne Forsberg. I don't believe her, but I do think she would have been where money was needed, says Olive. There you go. Mickey Kiker says the game fed their ego. Olive Heatley says, yeah, the reference on burning limbs always upsets me knowing now who he was referring to. And poor Tammy. Poor Tammy. That's all I can say. So anyway, y'all, I'm gonna get off here. It's Monday, got things I gotta do. I hope y'all have a great day. Wednesday, we'll continue forward with this whole theory of why hasn't Chad filed for divorce. I'm gonna put that question on the community wall, and I hope y'all will really think about it, comment on it, because I'm gonna read your comments on Wednesday. I might just learn something, right? I love you all. Have a great day and keep on looking.